So what will our currency be 500 years from now? I like to think that we might be space tourists, right? And space travel is going well. And what will we use as currency in space? Well, if we do a transaction in space, the distances are quite far. So if you're on one planet and I'm on another planet and we do a transaction, considering the theory of relativity, like how do you calculate interest rates when time is relative? Where do you put that clock to calculate interest rates? You would have to build arguably a distributed network throughout the galaxy, right? So that when you're doing the transactions, you could basically be calling on information systems throughout different moons and different planets. It may be that we have to find a new rare metal to use as a currency. Like what do they use in Star Wars? They use something called the intergalactic banking unit, or the credit, and that was based on a rare metal. So it might be that as we start to see space tourism, we have to use some kind of new metals that we find in the galaxy. We might have to build a distributed network throughout the galaxy so we can verify local transactions. And even here in America or in the world, in the Earth, we might be building systems where it's like an energy grid. We're all plugged into the same grid and we're trading vitamin B and calories, and we are rebalancing our energy. Because if you look throughout the natural world, energy is the currency of the natural world. The further we get into the future, maybe money may remain the same and remain as energy. It's not so crazy to look at science fiction. In fact, the first time the credit card was ever mentioned was in a book in 1887 called Looking Backwards by a man named Edward Bellamy. It's about this guy who falls asleep, wakes up in the year 2000, and what does he see? He sees the government creating credit cards for their citizens, and the government issues money on these credit cards. And so it's more of a socialist utopia, but if you look to the future, you can look at what economists say about the future, but I like to think about what are the science fiction people saying about the future? What is the idea of money in the future? And so some science fiction writers say, well, maybe in the future, if you can have a pacemaker embedded into your body, why not a payment device, right? So you just wave your hand over a payment reader. What about a reputation chip, where you walk in to a store and everyone knows your reputation already? I mean, that already happens. I walked into a store or a restaurant the other day, and I took out my cell phone because the maitre d' said, I'm sorry I don't have your reservation. And I took out my cell phone and I was just texting my friend, you can take your time. And the maitre d' said, well, sorry, sir, please don't write a negative review of me on Yelp or on Google. I said, I'm not going to do that. But to him, his reputation was a currency. If I put a negative review on him on Yelp or the internet, I might be intruding, or I might be damaging his future business. In that case, we don't need a brain chip for a reputation. Reputation's already a currency.